When the envelope landed on my porch that night, I thought it was another threat, but inside were bank slips, each signed by the very daughter who'd once called me Mom. My hands didn't shake, they wrote, because sometimes the quietest woman in the room holds the loudest proof. The story starts here. I pulled up to Maris and Silas's place that late Saturday afternoon with a casserole on my lap and a grocery bag of basics on the floorboard. The sky hung low, gray but humid, the kind of weather that pressed the day into your skin. The front yard hadn't seen a mower in weeks. A stack of Amazon boxes leaned against the porch rail, and the doorknob felt sticky when I turned it, signs of a house that had stopped caring. From next door, I could hear the muffled commentary of a college football game, the Alabama fight song rising and fading between cicadas. I knocked twice. "Come in," Maris called. "Not hello, just come in." The air inside smelled like reheated coffee and dry shampoo. I spotted the framed photo of my late son on the console, crooked. I straightened it without a word, then told myself, "You came for Nola, not for them." I steadied my breath like I do before choir hymns. Maris appeared in the kitchen doorway with that tight smile she wore like lip gloss. "Sweet tea. Store brand," she said. Her tone stretched politeness thin. I thanked her, knowing she'd rather I said no. When I handed her the cornbread I'd baked, she said, "We're cutting carbs." Then she slid the folded cash I'd tucked for diapers into her back pocket as if it were lint. Silas ambled in wearing gym shorts and an old crimson-tied t-shirt. Half a grin, no greeting. "Where's Nola?" I asked, setting the casserole near the sink. "She's napping," Maris said too quickly. "Upstairs." I caught the faint sound of cartoons, high-pitched laughter and theme music. I didn't argue. The countertop was splotched with bleach, patchy white against tan laminate. Someone had scrubbed hard, maybe too hard. Through the back door's window, I saw Silas swing a black trash bag over his shoulder. "Let me grab you another tie," I offered. He didn't answer. The bag tore a little, and a corner of mint green knit peeked out. My chest tightened. That was my blanket, the one I'd knitted when Nola was born, the one I'd wrapped around her the day we buried my son. Silas shoved it deeper with the broom handle, whistling off-key. It wasn't anger, just carelessness, and that hurt worse. Some men throw trash, some throw history. I thought, when he went back inside, I lifted the lid and pulled it free. Maris's voice came from the porch. "We're decluttering, Odessa. Minimalism helps kids thrive." She sounded like a podcast. I smiled thinly. "Bless your heart," I said, which in my mouth meant anything but blessing. "Can I kiss Nola goodnight? My blood pressure's up," I said. She hesitated, then waved me on. Upstairs. Nola looked up from her coloring book, brown curls everywhere. "Grandma, my blanket got in trouble," she whispered. I kissed her forehead, holding that truth between us. At home. The lamp by my bed glowed warm. I spread the blanket out, fingers tracing the familiar pattern. My hands had known every stitch. Near the center seam, my fingertips caught on something stiff, a hard, narrow ridge. I leaned close, smelling perfume that wasn't mine. A faint cosmetic stain at the corner. "Breathe, Odessa," I told myself. "Check, don't guess." I fetched my sewing kit, the one older than half the neighbors' marriages, under the bright bulb. The line looked new, too straight, too tight. Someone had opened this blanket and closed it again, with a small snip, then another. I eased 3 stitches loose. My hands stayed steady, the way they always did in quilting circle. Inside the batting, something clicked against the tip of my scissors. Plastic. Smooth. I drew out a tiny USB drive wrapped with floral tape. I set it beside my Bible and my pill organizer. My heart thudded, not from fear, but from recognition. My son used to joke, "Mama, you keep every receipt I whispered. "I did, baby, and you did too." Outside, a train horn wailed long and low, rolling through the neighborhood like a warning carried by the wind. I folded the blanket again, slipping it into a pillowcase, sealing the secret until morning. Tomorrow, I'd take it to Viola's bakery. Her old desktop was safer than any phone. "Don't borrow trouble," I murmured, echoing something my mother used to say. But trouble, I knew, was already borrowed, and now it had my name stitched into it. Sunday morning sunlight crept through my blinds like it had manners, soft and slow. The house was quiet except for the kettle whistling and a radio preacher reminding folks to take only what you need, leave the rest to God, I muttered. Easy for you to say, Reverend, while measuring sugar for my coffee. The blanket was folded in a pillowcase on my table, the USB sealed inside a plastic pill organizer. My tote sat ready, sewing kit, reading glasses, notebook. Don't borrow trouble, I told myself. Verify first, I called Viola. You home? Girl, I need your desktop. Wired, not Wi-Fi. She laughed. Lord, Odessa, you make it sound like espionage. I'll put on coffee. Bring cents and receipts. I wrote a note for my cousin, taped it to the fridge, her number, my destination, a small insurance against bad luck wearing work boots. Viola's living room smelled like lemon oil and percolator coffee, familiar and clean. Her old Dell hummed on the oak desk she bought at a church auction. We wore kitchen gloves, her idea. We're old, not careless, she said. The USB blinked faintly when we plugged it in. Folders popped up. Doc, bank, media, and one labeled, keep for safety. I swallowed. Click slow, I said. Don't rush the truth. Inside docs, there were PDFs of medical bills, rental papers, and a photo of a small metal key tagged 14B. Viola leaned closer. Keys live in drawers, not baby quilts. I felt along the folded blanket in the tote, fingertips brushing something taped beneath the fabric. When I peeled it free, there it was, the same key with tag 14B. My pulse jumped once, then steadied. We printed copies of every file, labeled them by hand, and split them into 2 envelopes. We drove down Green Springs Highway in her sedan, past pawn shops and payday loans, our windows half cracked against the thick Alabama heat. At the storage office, a young clerk popped gum and shrugged. Key's a key, ma'am. If it fits, it's yours. It fit. The metal door screeched open like a tired sigh. Inside, neat rows of banker boxes, a garment bag, plastic drawers, no chaos, just the kind of order guilty people make. We took photos first. I narrated timestamps out loud like a nurse charting vitals. Box 1 held bank statements dated after my son's death, marked rent and utilities. Box 2, a dead burner phone and printed emails talking about disbursement. A pharmacy receipt for temazepam caught my eye. Sleeping pills. Viola frowned. Real crooks use office supplies, she said. The garment bag held a lavender dress with makeup at the collar, the same scent I'd found on Nola's blanket. I didn't cry. I folded it neatly back, in a plastic drawer. We found another USB and a pamphlet on life insurance payouts. Highlighted lines glowed like confessions. We locked the unit and left it exactly as found. My son felt near then, not ghostly, but steady, like breath under a hymn. By dusk, we reached Maris's street. Porch lights flickered on. A neighbor across the way, an older man in a lawn chair, called out, "Ma'am, you keep coming by polite, but that night wasn't polite." My hand froze on the car door. "Go on," I said. He described shouting, a woman yelling, "Sign the papers!" Then a man's voice, desperate. "Not like this!" A thud followed, then footsteps and a silver pickup pulling away with its hazards blinking. He sipped his beer. "Figured y'all handled it." I thanked him softly. "You told me like you'd want someone to tell your mama." At home, I sorted every copy, sealing one set for my bank lockbox. I emailed myself a coded message, subject line, choir roster, fall, with nothing but an index attached. "Measure twice, cut once," I murmured. Viola nodded. "And keep quiet while you measure." Night settled around me like calm armor. I listed my vows. I wouldn't scare Nola, wouldn't accuse without proof, and wouldn't let grief drive the car. Then I powered up my old laptop. No Wi-Fi, no noise. The thumb drive from 14B blinked once, twice. New folders appeared. Front door. Back hall, Sep 13. I opened one. The camera caught the porch light and a figure raising a hand to knock. Not my son, not family. My breath paused. every nerve listening. The clock on my stove read 7:48 p.m., the same hour written on the coroner's report. The porch light flickered again in the recording, the bulb dimming like it was nervous. I replayed the clip 3 times, pausing at the moment that shadowed hand rose toward the door. I wrote the timestamp, logged every sound, the cicadas, the faint hum of a football game on someone's TV, even the click of Nola's wind chime moving in the background, then that voice. Just sign the papers, calm but clipped, vowels tight like Maris when she got tired of pretending to be nice. I pulled up an old voicemail from her phone and compared the tone. Close enough to stir my stomach? I freeze-framed the figure's sleeve. Off-white. Cuffed. And noted the door frame height. Each fact went in the left column of my notebook, every assumption in the right. I snapped photos with my phone, each one including my kitchen clock for reference. Then I opened another file labeled Backhall. The sound hit harder. A dull thud, a small cry. I closed my eyes. Write what happened, I whispered. Feel it later. The insurance PDFs waited in another folder. I printed them again. Side by side with my son's death certificate. Payouts were dated 2 days before his official date of death. I didn't gasp. I underlined, money doesn't weep. It plans. One line read contingent beneficiary Maris Etienne Cross. Another showed direct deposits to a rental address in Roebuck, one I'd never seen. I wrote her alias down, M. G. Alden, and stapled both pages under a blank cover sheet labeled Receipts. Money walks with a limp, I said out loud. Follow the limp. At dawn, I filled my tote and drove to the credit union. The young clerk notarized my papers, slid them back, and smiled like he knew but didn't dare ask. I left with 2 sealed envelopes and a new steadiness in my chest. At home, I powered on the flip phone from the storage unit, setting it inside a metal mixing bowl. The number saved as H had called 3 times before the night my son died. I dialed it back with asterisk 67. A man's voicemail answered, Hugh Rayner, leave it. My hand tightened around the receiver, but I said nothing. Just marked the time and the carrier prefix. The printed Gmail thread from the storage box mentioned disbursement and keep the car moving. A silver pickup truck. The neighbor had said. I wrote one line beside the name. Contractor connection? No theories, only paper. I slid everything into a red folder marked Detective. By mid-morning, I typed a text to Maris. You may not dispose of items belonging to Nola. Further attempts will be documented and reported. No anger, no punctuation beyond what the law would approve. Her reply came quick. 2 short words. Sharp as glass, I didn't respond. I forwarded both texts to my backup email, the one disguised as a church list. I whispered at my sink, God, grant me the spine to be kind and the backbone to be firm. Then I dialed Detective Lyle Brennan, the man Viola said was young enough to run but old enough to listen. I told him what I had, timestamps, bank movement, a burner tied to Hugh Rayner. He said he'd meet me that afternoon. Don't confront, and he warned. We're grown. I said, we know better. When I got home later, the air was too still. My front rug, slightly off-center. The storm door latch bent just enough to make a sound when touched. I froze, phone in hand, eyes steady. I backed out to the porch and dialed Brennan again. While I waited in my car, a silver pickup rolled by, slow, idled half a beat too long, then peeled away. Detective Lyle Brennan parked behind my mailbox, his cruiser lights turning my quiet street into a stage. I pointed toward the storm door. The latch hung sideways, and the rug that always sat square now angled toward the hall. You didn't move that, he asked. No, I said, and the camera's been blindfolded. I handed him a glove from my kitchen drawer. He peeled the tape from the lens, and a dull grease print shimmered under his pocket torch. We'll lift that, he murmured, snapping photos of the door frame and the chipped paint by the knob. I showed him my timestamp notes from the night before, the ones marked in neat ink and steady handwriting. He nodded and bagged the strip of tape. The camera's mic had kept recording through the blockage, a rustle, a boot scrape, and a whisper that sounded like, hurry! Brennan's jaw tensed. Whoever did this came knowing the angles, he said. I told him I planned to stay home tonight. Then at least install motion lights and promise me a check-in at 9. I agreed. Because that's what grown women do. We make safety a task, not a feeling. His text swabbed the print. I logged the sample ID in my notebook. I texted Viola 2 words. Tape. Print. She wrote back. Cake tin stays closed. My small comfort. Our code for evidence safe. On my tablet. The old clip replayed faint metallic clicks. Toolbox sound, Brennan guessed. My mind flashed to Hugh Rayner's name and that silver pickup. I sealed the external drive in a file box, pressed store-bought evidence tape across the seam, and Brennan smiled like he'd seen a grandmother school the system. After he left, I stood under the porch light, flicking it back on. A boundary can glow as quietly as that, bright enough to say no more sneaking. Maris called twice, both times ignored. The third time she texted words too mean for a church mouth. I forwarded them to Brennan and archived them. At my table, I drew 3 columns: insurance, audio, entry. Patterns grow when you treat pain like paperwork. Around 6, Mrs. Iverson from next door tapped my window. They're saying you called CPS on your own kin, she whispered. I looked her square in the eye. No, ma'am, that lie won't age well. Moments later, Brennan texted. CPS got a false tip claiming I was unstable. I typed back. I understand the play. The irony. Maris's trick called in a welfare check that uncovered a bruise report already filed from Nola's playground fall. The system looped back on her. Quiet justice. No shouting required. I drove to the preschool lot near closing time. From the fence, I waved. Nola saw me and grinned. Tooth gap wide. I left a composition notebook with the front desk. For Nola, Grandma's truths, I didn't step closer. Sometimes love stands still and lets the wind carry its message. That night, I recorded one message for Maris. Do not come to my property. Communicate in writing. Items for Nola handled through third party. My tone calm, plain, documented. I sent copies to Brennan and my pastor's assistant. Then I installed a battery light and wedged the door tight. Viola texted a cake emoji. I smiled. At 9:07 p.m., headlights cut across my living room. The silver pickup slowed. My motion light flared, turning the porch white. The truck eased forward, tires crunching gravel, then a hollow thunk against my mailbox. I stepped out, camera rolling. Inside lay a plain envelope with a baby safety pin taped to the front, small, sharp, and deliberate. The envelope lay open on my table, the copy of my son's death certificate staring up at me like a bad ghost. I didn't touch the center, just the corner edges. The font spacing was off, the seal blurred. Someone had reprinted it. I snapped a photo beside my wall clock, then another with my phone time visible. The grease print beside the baby safety pin looked newer than the one on my door lens. I called Detective Brennan, voice steady. It's a copy, I said. Same thumb pattern, same oil smell. He told me not to smudge it. Hands off, Odessa, just edges. When I hung up, I whispered, You sent me a ghost to rattle me. You only reminded me I keep records. I bagged the paper in a sleeve, labeled and logged the hour. Then I left one message for Maris. Do not contact me except in writing. I copied it to Brennan and my pastor's admin. Viola texted back a cake emoji when I asked if the drive and blanket were safe. She knew what it meant. Still sealed. Still ours. Brennan arrived within the hour, dusted for partial prints, and wrote his notes in that tight cop shorthand. The same petroleum trace as before, he said, confirming it linked to the camera tamper. He bagged everything. I gave him a written statement, simple and clean. Mailbox delivery, time 9:07 p.m. Evidence preserved. He approved. That's how grown people help investigations, he said. I smiled thinly. He mentioned the HOA street camera. I drafted my own homeowner request so he wouldn't have to wait on red tape. The next morning, I drove to the neighborhood hardware store. Hugh Rayner's company had an account there, his name printed on the pickup slips pinned near the register. I flipped through what was public. Electrical tape, door shims, industrial hand cleaner. Purchases dated the same night my lens was covered. I photographed the slips with the store's policy sign visible. No theft, just observation. Follow the small dollars, I murmured. They always squeak. At home, I compared those dates with county permit logs. Hugh's work invoices showed jobs that never had permits pulled. I printed a sheet, 3 columns, claim, record, contradiction. I highlighted the overlaps with my evidence timestamps. It wasn't drama, it was arithmetic. I emailed Brennan and dropped a copy into my Protective Order Exhibits folder. By noon, I was sitting in the HOA office beside the clerk's monitor. The 9:05 p.m. Footage showed a silver pickup easing down the street. A man jogged to my mailbox, gloved on the right hand, bare on the left. The callus across his knuckle caught the porch light like a scar. He dropped the envelope, ran, and disappeared into the truck. The camera caught just enough, the pattern of his gait, the truck's plate half glimpsed. I requested an official export, signed and dated. The clerk said, "You're good at this," I told her. "I've had practice being underestimated." Back home, I copied the file to my external drive, ran a checksum, printed it, and taped it inside my folder. Then I exhaled. The hum of my porch light came on at dusk right when it should. Machines keep their word when people don't. At 2 o'clock, I sat in the courthouse lobby, filling out a Pro-AC protection packet, every line in black ink. No flourish. I listed the envelope, the fake welfare call, the mailbox drop. I included Nola's name under potential minor affected. The clerk looked at me kindly. "You're doing it right," she said. I nodded. "You don't win these things yelling. You win them writing." As I stepped outside, my phone buzzed. Viola's voice came through thin and shaking. "Odessa, a man just asked if I was the cake lady with the box." He knew about the blanket. My chest went still. "Lock the back," I said. "I'm calling Brennan." The call from Viola snapped every muscle in my back. I was out the door before the second ring. Streetlights smeared across my windshield as I called Detective Brennan. "Stay visible," he said. Voice crisp. "Lights on. No hero moves." The silver pickup in my mirror wasn't pretending anymore. 2 cars back, same dent on the fender. I spoke the plate digits into my voice memo, steady as a newscaster. When I pulled up to the bakery, the open sign still glowed faint. Viola's shadow moved behind the blinds, pacing, her hand pressed against her chest. The cruiser slid in behind me, headlights cutting the dark. Brennan stepped out first, flashlight in one hand, calm in the other. "We've got this," he said. 2 officers circled to the alley while I noted what my eyes caught. Hinges bent outward, lock half hanging, flour scattered like snow near the threshold. Viola opened the door, trembling but upright. "He asked for the cake tin," she said. "You didn't give it," I said, already knowing. "Child, I played dumb since '72, she breathed. "Still got the knack." Inside smelled like sugar and fear. The cash drawer sat untouched, yet a display shelf had been shoved just enough to show someone searching, not stealing. Brennan found a torn glove near the counter and a coffee stirrer beside it. "We'll dust both," he muttered. I stayed close, silent but watchful. When he checked the security DVR, it was still rolling, old analog, safe from remote tampering. The cake tin sat on the counter. I unlatched it under his gaze, drive and blanket both untouched. He resealed it with fresh tape marked Chain B. I watched him write the label. Documentation keeps the heart from racing. An hour later, we sat at a side table while Viola filled out the incident report. Her handwriting wobbled, but her words cut clean. Male, 30s, brown jacket, smelled like mechanic soap. My phone buzzed, a voicemail from Maris. Her voice shook. "You need to stop digging. Odessa." I hit save and forwarded it to Brennan without a word. He nodded grimly. "That's intimidation." The bakery DVR footage caught a man at the back door, headset clipped to his ear. Through static came the words, "She's got the blanket. No, the file too." Brennan filtered the audio, leaned back. "That's Hugh Rayner. Same voice from his license call," I said. "Now we've got his mouth, not just his hand." He smiled, tired but impressed. "You could teach half my rookies." We copied the drive and logged it as Exhibit Audio Confirmation. Viola wiped her eyes. Lord uses old hands steady, she said softly. At midnight, Brennan got word Hugh had been picked up. Relief brushed through me, brief, foolish. An hour later, he returned, jaw set. Maris bailed him out. I folded my hands on the table. So she signs for the man who taped my porch. He met my eyes. That makes her part of the file now. I drafted an addendum for my PFA. Voice clip, bail record, timestamp, proof, not panic, by dawn. Viola brewed decaf in the wrecked bakery. We've been underestimated all our lives, she said. Might as well keep cashing that check. I smiled. Sometimes survival is professional-grade paperwork. We stepped outside just as Brennan's phone rang. He listened, face tightening. Maris just filed a harassment complaint against you. I looked toward the silver truck parked under the street lamp and said, Then it's time we flip the tape. I reached the courthouse before sunrise. Coffee still steaming through the lid. Detective Brennan met me under the courthouse arch with a single folder marked Exhibit B. We sat through the docket shuffle until the judge called my case. My folder lay open like a map. Timestamps, call logs, chain of custody labels neatly clipped. When the bakery recording played, Hugh Rayner's voice came through the static. She's got the blanket. The file, too. A whisper that cut through the courtroom like a confession. The judge paused the tape, then flipped through Maris's complaint filed the night before. Dates didn't match. Words contradicted her own timeline. Miss Kellum, he said, tapping the file. You've documented thoroughly. When folks don't see you, I answered. Your receipts will... No gloating, just gravity. He granted a 90-day extension and a wider no-contact perimeter. When we stepped into the sunlight, Brennan whispered. That was surgical, I said. Surgery's quieter than shouting. By midday, Viola and I walked into the Crestwood HOA clubhouse, where the board president clutched Maris's new letter about unsanitary textiles and disturbing activity. I stood beside the long table and set down copies of my deed, my paid-in-full HOA fees, and receipts for the streetlight upgrades I had funded myself. If these grounds look brighter, I said, that's my check glowing. Murmurs rose. I read 2 of my own emails. Calm requests to discuss vandalism and safety, each predating Maris's accusations. The HOA attorney cleared his throat. Selective enforcement invites litigation, he warned. Neighbors nodded. One elderly man mentioned seeing a silver pickup circling my cul-de-sac Monday night. The board voted within minutes, no action against me. Written warning to Maris for misuse of complaint procedure, I thanked them softly. We all want flowers to grow here, I said. Flowers don't grow under floodlights of gossip. For once, the room stayed still long enough to listen. After lunch, I stopped by Nola's preschool, paperwork in hand. The director read the judge's order carefully, underlined my pickup times, and added my contact sheet to the staff file. I handed her the safety plan. Teacher escorts Nola to my car. No curbside pickups, no playground exits near the street. We'll keep eyes open, Monsieur, she said. A parent I barely knew squeezed my hand on her way out. We've got grandbabies, too. Do what you have to do. Afternoon light slanted across the credit union lobby. Keisha Dorn ushered me into her glass office while my attorney, Rayvon Pierce, joined by speakerphone. I unfolded the small ledger I'd found sewn inside Nola's blanket, rows of handwritten deposits, each labeled with her initials. Keisha compared it to the bank's custodial records. These deposits match your payroll, she said, but recent withdrawals track to an ATM near a contractor supply store, Hugh Rayner's territory. She scrolled, eyes narrowing. Secondary access was added last year from Maris Cross's home IP. Rayvon's voice came through the speaker, steady and low. That's conversion of a miner's account. We'll file to freeze it today. Keisha printed the report, slid it across the desk. You built a college fund, she said. Someone treated it like petty cash. College is sacred in this house, and I answered, we start paying back today. No shouting followed, just pens scratching, forms stacking, signatures sealing the new trail. That evening, I laid the blanket flat on my kitchen table. The seam I'd opened still carried the scent of starch and old love. I traced its stitches, remembering my grandmother saying, "Write it down, baby," even if nobody asked for proof. I recorded a message for Nola. "When people tell you it's nothing, write it anyway." Viola called. We talked locks and pickup schedules, little acts that build safety. I slid the new ledger copy into a fireproof pouch beside the evidence drive. The zipper's rasp sounded like a door locking for good. Then my phone buzzed. Brennan again. Rayvon filed. Judge signed the temporary freeze. But listen, traffic cam just flagged the silver pickup heading toward your block. I turned off the kitchen light and stepped to the window. Headlights crept past my mailbox. My porch camera chimed. I texted one word back. "Here." The cruiser idled outside my gate, engine humming under the dark. I stood behind the glass of my storm door, porch light off, phone camera steady. The manila envelope lay squarely on my doormat, edges crisp like it had been delivered with intention. Detective Brennan's flashlight beam swept over it once. Before he looked at me, "Don't touch it barehanded," he warned. Could be prints. I slipped on gloves and knelt down. The night smelled of rain and iron. My porch camera blinked red, capturing every breath inside the envelope. I found 3 ATM withdrawal slips, each stamped to the exact dates from Nola's account ledger. Same amounts, same handwriting. Signature read M. A. Cross. A fourth paper was tucked inside. A crumpled contractor receipt for building supplies billed to Hugh Rayner's company, with my street listed on the delivery address. That detail sat heavy in my chest, like a name whispered in church during prayer. I sealed the papers back into a new evidence sleeve and looked at Brennan. "Chain of custody begins here," I said. "Steady." He nodded and filmed as I handed it over. My phone buzzed. A text from Rayvon blinked. "Anything usable?" I typed back. "Receipt signature obtained, filing first thing." I didn't smile. The victory wasn't sweet, it was structured. Tonight was for collecting proof, not collecting applause. Morning light poured into the courthouse hallway like honey over stone. Rayvon walked beside me. Suit crisp, eyes sharp. We'd done this before, but never with this much weight behind it. The courtroom smelled faintly of coffee and printer ink. When the judge entered, everyone straightened. Rayvon motioned for the clerk to play Exhibit D, the footage of Brennan lifting the envelope. Then the slips were displayed, time-stamped to match Keisha's internal bank report. Maris sat at the plaintiff's table, her face powdered pale. She began, "Your Honor, it was all a misunderstanding." The judge cut her off, voice cold. "Funds titled to a child are not a family slush fund." His gavel landed hard enough to echo. He signed the freeze order, issued a subpoena for all access logs tied to her home IP, and expanded my no-contact perimeter to include financial interference. My pulse stayed slow. Vindication, for me. Wasn't fire. It was ink drying on official paper. By noon, I was back at the Crestwood HOA clubhouse. The same folks who'd once avoided my gaze now shuffled uneasily as minutes from the last meeting were reread. Maris's complaint about unsanitary textiles and disturbing activity sounded smaller now. Shrill in print, Viola, wearing her bakery apron like armor, spoke up. "We deal in facts, not gossip." Even the ones who'd whispered behind closed blinds nodded this time. The board voted to issue formal censure. Lyle had already contacted Hugh's employer. That contractor receipt triggered a compliance audit. By afternoon, word spread. Hugh was on administrative leave pending investigation. I didn't gloat. I simply folded the board's printed minutes, labeled them for Rayvon, and slid them into a binder titled Receipts. 2025. Back home. The air felt different, still, but lighter. Rayvon called to confirm the freeze had been enacted and a new education trust was drafted for Nola. I'd serve as trustee, accountable to the court. With quarterly reports, I revoked every informal helping hand arrangement. No cash under cushions, no secret Venmo transfers. If money moves, I told Rayvon, it moves with a docket number. That night, I changed every lock in the house. Viola brought her toolbox and a thermos of mint tea. We replaced the porch light with motion sensors. hung a privacy fence taller than my doubt, and retired the fake rock that had once held a spare key. She smiled. Hifeti. They underestimated you again, Masao, I answered. They mistake quiet for weak. Later. I sat alone at my kitchen table. The baby blanket lay before me, soft from age, the same one that had hidden the ledger. I threaded a new red silk seam through its edge, bright, deliberate, permanent, my grandmother used to say. Never hide what's mended. Let the world see where you've been stitched stronger. When the final knot tightened, I whispered, "This stays closed for good." The next morning, I filmed a small statement for my community page. No names, no venom. Keep a ledger, I said softly, looking straight into the lens. If they call you bitter, show your entries. Comments came fast. Churchwomen, widows, mothers who'd carried other people's burdens without acknowledgement. One wrote, "You just taught us how to stay seen." By noon. Keisha emailed, subpoena delivered, IP logs tied directly to Maris's home router. Brennan called next. DA's office accepted the referral. It's official now. I forwarded the documents to the preschool, updating Nola's pickup plan. When she saw me at the gate that afternoon, she ran out laughing, waving the red-threaded blanket like a flag. "Grandma fixed it," she shouted. "Sure did, baby," I said, scooping her up. "And Grandma's not letting anyone undo it again." Evening came with silence and a long sigh of relief. I brewed chamomile, sat by the window, and watched the world turn slower than usual. A certified letter slid through my slot, Maris through counsel, offering restitution and an apology to be read in court. I laid it flat on the table, unopened. Forgiveness without repair is decoration, not healing. Then my phone buzzed. A voice memo from an unknown number. Hugh's voice rasped through static. "Check the second card," he said. "She opened it in my name. I was the hammer, she was the hand." I saved the file, forwarded it to Brennan and Rayvon, and turned off the porch light. The blanket, folded neatly, waited on Nola's pillow, red thread glinting under lamplight. I tied the final knot twice, just to be sure. The morning sun poured through my window just as Brennan's text appeared. New card identified. You won't believe whose name is on it. I froze mid-sip, heart ticking like a metronome. Outside. A black SUV idled by my mailbox. Again. Who was really pulling the strings this whole time?